Hello, everyone. Welcome to the talk, branching into tech art. Thanks for coming. That's really awesome. My name is Richard, and I hope to give you a sort of like introductory talk about like what tech art is, and maybe how you can ease your way into it if you're interested, right? All right, let's go. So first, show of hands. Who in here is an artist? Just like hands up. All right, that's good. Who of you is a coder, like hardcore? Right. Who of you is a tech artist? Oh my God. I hope I don't embarrass myself, but don't be too harsh. And who is none of these? What are you doing here? Just kidding. Okay. Why should you actually listen to me though? And I want to tell you something. Like this was my first love, right? Don't tell my wife, but I still own it. It's a C64, really old machine. And when I got it, I was 8 years old, and I spent a lot of time looking at this, actually. I'm this old. Okay, sorry about that. And this isn't really interesting, but I actually looked at this because what I really wanted to do is that, right? Making games. And I did. So I wrote a few games in BASIC and had my fun. And then I stopped like touching code for a very long time. After some detours, I actually did my postgraduate studies in 3D and got hired as a junior artist in a company in Regensburg called Zipsoft, right? And I was really happy, junior artist 3D. What I soon learned, though, was that I was the only artist at the company, only 3D artist at the company, and the company had no experience with 3D stuff whatsoever, right? And so I got a task list from them, and that looked like this. Half of the things I remotely heard about during my studies. The other stuff, I just didn't know any of it, actually. And so they asked me if I could do this, and I did the only responsible thing you could do in a situation like this. I said yes. So I spent the next few years regretting some decisions there and actually trying to learn the stuff on this list, right? But this was, for me, a kind of like an eye-opening moment. And I think you should do this, right? You have to take on things that you don't fully understand, but you're kind of pretty sure you can learn while doing them, right? So this is where we can actually grow, right? Without pain, there's no gain, that kind of stuff. For me, it's like a 60-40 rule, right? 60% of whatever you do, whatever task you get assigned, is something you should kind of know about. Like 40% is something that you really want to learn, right? This doesn't mean you have to fully disclose this to your bosses, right? Just be confident, answer yes, and then hope for the best. Right, okay. This is really my intro to tech art, right? Because I had suddenly a bunch of work to do that wasn't artistic at all. It was more scripting and figuring out how to switch input skeletons per code and that kind of stuff, right? All very fun, but we needed it really. And we started onboarding people, and so we developed a tool pipeline. And all that kind of stuff is like an opportunity for, concept art, like the mix between art and tech. Let's see, tech art. That's it. Basically, we have this field between art and code where, cool stuff is happening, kinda. And this is super simplified, right? It's more like a multi-dimensional thing because there's so much that is actually tech art. And for every studio, it's kind of different, right? Sometimes it's more tool development, sometimes it's shaders, sometimes it's VFX, sometimes it's some other thing, right? It can be something different. That's the cool thing about tech art. It isn't like this one defined thing. But just remember, you are coming from one of the sides, probably like art and code, okay? So how do we get actually into this without, I don't know, ending up super frustrated, right? So Coming from the art side, this is just the art example, but it works on the coding side too, obviously. Imagine yourself as this white dot, and you have a certain set of skills and capabilities. And the white circle, that's your comfort zone, right? That's stuff you already know. As long as you work in your comfort zone, every artist knows you don't learn, you don't get better. You have to venture outside, and learning really happens on the fringes of the zone. And this is kind of your way forward, right? You are doing, you know what you can do, but where should you go? There's different options for you to like develop outside of this zone. And this is kind of like charting your personal way, right? You don't have to pre-plan this, right? Maybe the next thing you're looking at coming from art is animation, right? You go to animation. From there, you could go to rigging, right? This is just like taking up one challenge after the other. It's your personal way. There are, however, I say advantages doing it like this, to staying close to what you already know and extending a bit. Because if you just pick a random point and say, now, tomorrow I learn about ray tracing, right? It might get a bit frustrating at first, right? Because it's kind of complicated. And well, maybe follow the path. That being said, like if you're intrinsically motivated to learn something, it can be an interesting thing to like just open a second comfort zone and start growing from there, right? That's up to you. That's your part. There is no, you should do it like this in your personal journey from art or code into a tech art. Also, what's really important to understand is like tech art isn't just you, it's your team. And you are something like a paladin, like this guy, right? Because you go where none of your teammates wants to go. You go to the dark cellars, to fighting monsters and building tool sets and that stuff, right? But I mean, it's kind of true, right? The coders, they don't want to touch art. It's not their thing. Maybe I don't want, right? Artists, on the other hand, if you mention the word code, it's like an empty room, right? Code, oh my God, where did everyone go? Yeah, there, I said it, code. Seriously, when I started coding anything, I was super afraid, right? I was literally sitting there in front of my computer and sweating a lot. And this is perfectly normal. So just go on. And one interesting thing about it is like, code isn't code, because these things won't be on your plate, right? This is just like very specialized high-level code that you as a tech artist will probably never touch even remotely. And it's fair enough, because you are in a team, right? You have your coders, or coming from the code side, you have your artists. You don't have to, right? As a tech artist, we just like try to be somewhere in the middle. But this, no. One other, I'd say, misconception that I want to clear is, because it's one thing that you always hear, like, you're not talented enough to do X, Y, Z. That pertains to art as much as it does for code. What I'm saying is, fuck this. Talent is something you don't need here. It's just like spending the time. Every artist has heard the term 10,000 hours, right? If you do something for 10,000 hours, you probably be good. Same for code. Right? If you put in the time and try to learn this stuff, whatever it is, you probably be good at some point. You do not need talent. If you want to write the internet, maybe, okay, you need talent and 10,000 hours. But for us and for the things you do, you're probably going to do in your project, just go on. The only thing that you really need is that, the willingness to keep learning, going on, right? It's just your motivation to go forward. That's all it takes. And if someone tells you otherwise, they're lying. That's it. Additionally, you do not have to code in this cryptic, I don't know, typing in your stuff, what you see on the movies, right? When someone's like on the Matrix computers and doing their stuff. No, that's not what you have to do necessarily. You will eventually, but most of the time, nowadays, you have something like visual graphs, right? Most software packages have it for shaders, for coding whole games, right? Nearly everything you can do in game development, you can do with a visual graph nowadays. And why I bring this up is because it's a really nice way to understand the one thing you have to learn, and that is not typing code, it's logic, right? You need to understand how things work together. And this is really just like illustrating this concept. This is the same stuff. The one is like a small graph from Substance Designer, and the other thing is just like a C# method, basically. Yeah, it's the same thing, right? So you see, going forward with coding, no problem. One word of warning, if you type in your Google search and search for everything on the internet, right, there's so much there, but you will come across these searches where you have 9 pages and the last 4 pages are just like linking to the same forum post about this one topic you cannot really find a solution for. This is probably a good idea to find help then, right? Because you have arrived at a point where it's very specialized, and maybe turn around and reconsider and seek another solution you can actually handle. This happens more often than not, especially with graphics programming. It's kind of crazy how often you come across search results like this. Okay, but nonetheless, I hope I've shown you that it's not so difficult like to get into like coding logic and master that part of being a tech artist. At this point, I want to talk about what tech art actually is. What you can do with it, which concepts you should be familiar with, and it's not like extensive, right? This is such a huge field that there's so much room and stuff for applications you can know, techniques you need to know. So this isn't like extensive, right? It's just like a small overview. And you don't have to know all of this. As I said, like every team, every personal journey is kind of different. It's more like a best of thing. Let's see. This is just something from my personal playbook, what I did in the last months and years. Yeah, pixel art, VFX effects. But I mean, what I really like seeing like effects makes me super happy, actually. I like when something explodes or you have smoke. You simulate this stuff, bring it into the game engine. That was really fulfilling for me, right? It's just a small like overview of fun things that I personally did. Yeah, drones and lasers, healing effects, lasers again, explosions. See, whenever I get the chance, I blow stuff up. Right, fire tornado. All of these were made for the game, right? This is just the environment, the atmosphere. This is stuff from a Substance Designer, which I really use on a daily basis. It's a great tool. More on that later. Yes, and this is fractals, basically. This is also kind of tech art, right? Simulations. Yes. Okay, and all of this ties a bit into one concept that I think is nowadays super important with all of what we do, and this is proceduralism. Now, what is proceduralism? Contrary to when we design something as it is, proceduralism strives to describe something, right? To develop rules to produce the outcome. For example, right? The graph network below there is from a software called Gaia. It's like a terrain generation software. And you basically plug these nodes into each other and do something with the output in order to create the terrain. I did not model any of this terrain. Like I didn't do the erosion. I didn't do the colors. I just like developed the description of it. And this is basically what proceduralism is. I want a defined outcome, right? Not a random result necessarily. I want to put in something like a random seed, like you see below. This is just like one graph with 2 different random seeds, and I get a predictable outcome. If I put in the same number, the same things will happen. That being said, these descriptions, they can have knobs and sliders you can turn, right? And make something like this. It's the same graph network, right? The only thing I do is basically define the limits and what happens with these values in order to create an outcome that's useful for me, right? And having a graph like this is pretty practical because I will probably never in my life need a brick texture again, right? It's there. These graphs look about like this. It's not super complicated. I'll go into detail about these later on. but see, like if you learn these concepts and it's basically the same thing, like the code, you will be able to create this in no time, right? And all of this is reusable over multiple projects. Many of the nodes in there can just be reused, right? Take them with them. It's not possible. Like many software packages nowadays, like Blender's geometry nodes and so on. The biggest like elephant in the room is this one, right? It's Houdini. It's basically a data processing suite that allows you to use code and graphs to create various things, right? While not just meshes. This is something we are using it at Skyward Assembly for creating assets. And this is probably the most low-level use of this thing. You can do really intricate, like complete environments from modeling. Like this is one of our buildings, a bit more interesting. This is just the base shapes, basically. We're playing around with this. But Houdini is really cool, really deep software. So if you're interested in that, there's much demand for people that actually know Houdini. And I think it might be the king of procedural software packages. So if you want to go into that, have fun. The next thing I really want to talk about, what did this? Okay, I need to click. Very good. I want to talk about shaders. Shaders is something that's also like, I don't know, there's a lot of misconceptions there. It doesn't have to be complicated nowadays, right? You have shader graph, you have the blueprints in Unreal to create shaders. It's again more about learning what they really do, right? And this is shader from our upcoming game, just a decal for the ground, the crystal texture. It was really fun creating this. Let's see. Yeah, this is the Unity shader graph for this. We're still on Unity, I know. Well, there's been issues. But to be fair, like whatever you see here is, you can take this basically and just like transfer it to any other software or write this in HLS or whatnot. Yeah, let's zoom in a bit. And the really cool thing about an artist having access to technologies like shaders and being able to create them yourself, you gain a lot of creative freedom, right? You don't have to be running to your colleagues and say, could you help me make this crystal shader? No, you just sit down, think about the ideas you have, and at some point you will be able to realize this without help. And for me, this was extremely liberating, right? Being able to do this on my own without someone babysitting me, that is amazing, really. Yeah, that's the whole graph. One honorable mention I want to bring up, and this is something more like a toolbox for playing around, is processing, right? Processing is a image editing library and toolbox and a small like IDE along with it. That's just like focused on doing stuff with images, right? So it's made for artists, basically. Yes, you have to write code, but this is like a shot from the homepage that countless of examples you can just like download and see how it goes and what happens. And it's really fun. For me, it is a really good way to, I don't know, experiment a bit, like without heavy commitment into a game engine. I can just like fire up a processing sketch and make this, right? Or this. Just like art experiments, like trying a few things, or these, just a few of my recent experience. Sometimes I totally make useful stuff with that because I was bummed that I didn't have like a circuit board tool. And so I made this. I can generate my circuit board textures for, I don't know, cyber, electronic, whatever, right? And so it's a really nice thing, and you should definitely go and look at processing. It's really fun to play around with. And it's an inexpensive, it's free, and really a playful way to start a bit with coding, right? One thing I want to talk about is like how you go about grasping this, right? We have to change our view a bit in order to grasp these concepts. And this is what I call deconstructive thinking, right? It's a nice term, right? I don't really know if it's clear enough. So let's give an example. As artists, we always like to describe something as a whole. Like we want to see the mountain, the light, and we paint this, right? From an artistic point of view. But the mountain is just like an example, right? It can be any problem. But what we really need to do, and as tech artists especially, is break things down, right? We need to know how the mountain looks and how this gets made, but we also need to look at how the trees get made and what the bark is like and what the moss is like, what the trees and the rocks is like, right? If you're creating an environment, you need to solve that exact problem, right? But for any other problem, it's the same idea, basically. Whatever problem you have, you need to understand what the parts are, how the parts work, right? And this might differ from how you did things now, right? And this is more about like starting to build good habits in trying to think like this and trying to look at the details wherever you are, right? You don't have to master this all at once, right? But this is something you have to learn to, like, I don't know, cultivate in your everyday life. Yeah, breaking down a problem. So let's break down this texture. Go a bit more in depth, I'd say. This is like a broken sand tile that we did for our game, and it's completely done in Substance Designer. So I looked at photographs from dried out like desert lakes and stuff like that, and I wanted to recreate this thing. And yeah, after reference boards, I started to like get down to the details. How can I create the patterns that I'm seeing? So, okay, this part is a bit more, I don't know, in depth for texture creation, but again, it's just an example, right? It's the stuff that I make and I enjoy. Yeah, it might be different for you, but still. So the first thing I did is generate like point clouds. You see different points, different densities. And with those, you can go ahead and run a distance node, right? Distance gives you basically Voronoi cells, if you heard that term at some point. But you already see what this pattern looks like, right? It's kind of like cracks, especially if you run an edge detection on it. It looks like this. And now it kind of becomes apparent, right? It's all a bit like too geometric, and we'll ruin it later by destroying the edges a bit. But this is already like the cracks, okay? This, on the other hand, is like taking the Voronoi output and giving random slants to it, because all the plates on the ground, they aren't like flat like this. They're just like a bit slanted, right? And you can do it relatively easily in Substance Designer by employing a flood fill node and then random filling it with these gradients. Combined, it looks like this. And now you can already see, I think, that this is starting to look like a height map, right? We have the cracks layered on top of it, inverted, so you have like this downward impression. And yes, right, let's go ahead. Now, this is the part where the small rocks get layered on top of it. They're just like littered, basically, on top of it. I couldn't find any specific rules. It might be different if you do moss on a rock or something. Then you have certain areas that collect moisture, right? This wasn't the case for these rocks, and so they just like get scattered. And now we have all this data, right? We have height data. We have this a mask for the rocks. We can do something with it. The first thing we're going to do is create our albedo channel, right? The rocks have a bit like a grayish tone, and the rest is basically sand or dried loam textured like this. We create a roughness map from it. The whole cracks are very rough, so that's the white stuff. It's a bit hard to see, I guess, but still. And we create the normal map from it. And now we can already see like the details emerging and where this is going, right? The same for ambient occlusion. And we combine it, and it looks like this. And this is just like illustrating this concept, like breaking things down into manageable chunks and solving one thing after the other, right? Trying to get this material in this state all at once won't happen. You have to deconstruct it, really. Okay, I want to talk about why. We have spent a lot of time now talking about what you can do and maybe how you can learn to get into this, but why should you do it? Right, tech artists are in high demand, right? You have the technical skill, the artistic mindset. Yeah, you can talk to art and tech. You see, you're gonna earn good money more than an artist, maybe a bit less than a coder. Sorry, code guys. But still, For me, though, this is the most boring reason ever. You see, it's a boring slide. It has a colon and many bullet points, so it's a boring slide, right? So is there anything else for us that can help us that's kind of more interesting and cool to us than just like earning more money? And I think, yes, there is. Let's go over it. The most important reason for me is tools. You know the drill, right? Whatever software you take on, there's never the full set of features that you want, right? That your team needs. Never. How could that be? Like any tool developer knows that if you publish like a tool for a 3D tool, Maya, whatever, you cannot satisfy all needs. That's why they build scripting pipelines into their tools, right? So you can go in and try to make something that fits your project in your style. And this is really, don't underestimate this. This is really the power of being able to make your own tools for you, for your workflows, and for your teams, right? I don't know, Atlas Creator in Substance Designer, or a custom layer export tool for Photoshop, custom gizmos, scene switcher in Unity. All of these things save you time, you and your team. And for me, I set myself a 3 times rule, that if I get annoyed by something for the 3rd time, I just will dedicate a bit of time to look into it. And it might be as easy as like just finding if there's a shortcut for it. But most of the time it's just like, yeah, trying to find out what can I do about it? Is there a scripting possibility? If there is the documentation good enough that I can get started? And if I know what to do, or if there is an option, I can just evaluate, like if I spend X, Y amount of time to do this, how much will I get back? And sometimes it's kind of crazy, right? I wrote myself an export tool for Photoshop back when I was still using Photoshop, actually, where I could just like export layer sets with the press of a button. It would name it and just like put it in the folder. And I spent a good half a day, maybe 4 hours, to make it happen. And I thought to myself that that's pretty long, but I cannot count the amount of hours it actually saved me by just like pressing a button and get it done, right? No more naming, no more layer blending and stuff like that, just to get the output. No more slicing the whole image. I just didn't care. I just made folders, gave them names, export, done. So if this evaluation looks kind of positive to you, right? You should say like, I spend X hours on this. How much does it gain? How much do I gain? And you can gain a lot. Yeah, right. And if it's not just you, but if it's your team, you can just like see how this is scaling, right? Being able to create tools is a superpower, really, for me. These are some of the things we are doing at Skyward Assembly, where we basically ripping the guts out of Unity and doing stuff ourselves. Our terrain system and the gray spheres is basically a distribution pattern for different things that can be placed, like the grass and the rocks. And all of this is the test output, basically, that Andreas, our technical director, put together for me. But it's really cool to have these things, right? It makes it easy for us to go in the editor and just like create these patterns, link them, try them out, like paint them on the terrain. All of this isn't like standard Unity functionality. All of that is created for us, right? And yeah, going forward, for us, it's super important to keep this tooling alive and evolve on it. And another thing that's really great for us is having these tools. They are somewhat Unity agnostic. So with the things I mentioned before, with Unity doing their things, right? We can actually port this to other game engines really quickly because it doesn't use many features that Unity has, except for gizmo drawing, right? So the rest is pretty open. Right, the other superpower, what I think, is recombination. Each of the tools and each of the things you do, each of the textures you generate, whatever you do, it's not like only that thing. It grows into something better, right? You have tools to alleviate your export woes, right? You have multiple textures you can reuse, rescale. You gain, while doing that, you gain nodes for patterns, tools for in your engine, right? That's saving time. And all of this is building on each other and just like stacking positive things up on positive things. And the more you know, basically, the more you build, and the faster the more versatile you will get, right? The more you will be able to give informed decisions, right, or have solutions available. Okay, just like a very, very easy example. What I think that's a bit underused in game dev in general. Let's build a dungeon, right? So generating a dungeon layout procedurally, that's pretty run of the mill, right? Rooms next to each other. But could you actually build the room procedurally? Are there any rules that allows you to basically generate this floor layout for you? And if you do, is there a possibility to create assets procedurally that you can link in that system and then replace walls, doorways, decorations, what have you, right? Floor, different versions of this, procedurally made. You see where this is going, right? I can just like add on this very quickly, even with the textures. And then we have the option to choose, let's say randomly from these things. With a press of a button, you can generate a room and have a random contents in these rooms, right? And that's not even right just for runtime. This can be to build time, just a tool for the level designers, right? To give them a starting point, right? They hit the button and generate something, and then they can go in and change things as they like, right? Pull from different pools and play around and change things as they like. But like giving them the head start and doing all the chores with, as I said, maybe the press of a button, that's already really powerful. And I really think that these techniques help every team, right? I haven't seen a project where you actually couldn't apply stuff like randomizer or procedural textures or procedural meshes even. All of this is really achievable and possible too. Right. So for the last part of the talk, I really want to give you guys some advice that I would have liked to have back when I started. Number one, okay, this is really open. You need to keep your mind open and curious. And what I mean by that is all of what surrounds us, right, is information for us. Like the chair you're sitting on, like the lights above, and the black cables and stuff hanging like that. How does that look? How does light react on this stuff, right? All of this should be interesting to you, right? The floor, the light boxes, the walls, all of this. You need to be awake when you run around, right? Maybe spend some time not looking at the phone. We know how these things look by now, but try to like take in what's around you, right? You don't have to, I don't know, make reference boards and take photos of everything. I mean, you can. That's my holiday photo album is like half is family, the other half is stupid wooden doors and yeah, my wife's pretty curious what that's meaning in the family album, but right. So obviously you can, but you don't have to, right? But if you go past, I don't know, a rusted fence, and you just like look at it with open eyes, you will at the 10th time, you will have a visual cue in your brain that says, yeah, well, rusted. I know how rust looks, kind of. You can still use reference, right? But you will build a library of things, and this is actually something you don't have to dedicate time on, because if you're going to the bus stop, right, there's much to see. If you're doing a hike, there's much to see. Like, just keep your mind open, take in all of these things. It's more like changing your habit, actually. And this helped me really do this. So this one is really important because as a tech artist, as I said, you have art and you have code. And you can talk to both parties, right? But in order to understand a problem, you need to find out what's going on. And this is, in many teams that I've personally worked on, and I've fallen into that trap more than once, right? It's always hard if art and code talk to each other. Artists want to make cool characters. Too many polygons, says a graphics coder. And they go at each other and have a feeling that something is wrong, right? The other person isn't respecting my work. I don't know, you know how that goes, right? And so, as a tech artist, you have the power to understand both parties. You have to the idea about like graphics coding. You know why performance is important, right, and why this is a thing. But you also know how important it is for an artist to own the character and have a vision about that. And you don't need to educate both parties. I don't know, but you can listen and then propose a solution. And this is really important. In every team for me. But that turns into you're not the star. That means just because you are in the fortunate position to be able to talk to everyone doesn't mean that you are the most important person in the room, because that is not the case. As I said, you are the support character. Yeah, you play a paladin. You heal. You protect. The other people, they are really important, right? And you need to help them to be better, to work better, to make it faster, to make them get along good. And this is really that. And this is really important too. I would say don't push yourself too hard. For me, it was always these moments when I went way out of my comfort zone into something that was too far away, like the stuff I shared at the start. When I got really frustrated about what happened. And I would say, don't do that, right? Sometimes it's enough that you spend time with the problem. You cannot solve every problem at once. I mean, as a concept artist, you probably know the drill, right? You cannot get concept design done in an hour or so. You cannot just like, oh, I designed this character now, an hour later it's done. No, you take the character along with you, right? You take it home with you, you think about it, takes a few days, takes a few iterations, you live with this, right? And then you can slowly begin and finish the details and get to a point where everyone is happy with it. And it's the same with the other problems too. Like, take the problems with you, right? You will run into very different, difficult things, especially with graphics, especially with tool development. There will be moments where you know that your abilities aren't there, or where you feel you don't have a good grip on the problem that you have. And it's really important to be able to step back and take this problem with you, right? Keep a book in your mind where you have these problems. And when you have some time, just like, think a bit, right? If you're waiting for your dentist's appointment, maybe you get back to this one problem and you can think of it a bit. And that's a good habit. Having a list of things you can turn your attention to, right? Most of the time, it won't be just that one problem you have to solve. Maybe one other thing can be finished faster while you are still thinking about this. All right. And this is the last thing for me to tell you, never stop learning. I would say with all the developments nowadays, especially technology, I mean, we have AI rising and there's different opinions on that, but still, you know, the field of expertise that you want to be in as a tech artist is pretty volatile. And there's many apps, many technologies, many new things happening. And you are the person that will get asked by your producer to evaluate these, right? So whenever you stop learning and looking at new stuff, you lose a race, right? And it might sound hard, but as I say, you don't have to learn everything 100%. Sometimes it's just good to get a grip on what's going on, right? But if you know much about the technological developments, you can then, when you have a problem, say, oh, I know this one thing that came out. I can take a look at it and can try and make it work, right? Put a bit more research into it. It's more like a library of possibilities that you carry along. For me, that's really the best part of the job, because it allows me to like experiment a bit and do stuff that hasn't been that I haven't done before, right? It allows me to read papers and stuff like that. It's cool, right? You don't have to do all of this, but you kind of have to love it, at least like love learning and never stop to do so. So in general, that was my talk. Thank you for listening. I hope I could give you like my perspective on things. I will be happy to answer questions should you have them. As I said, tech art is pretty deep. There's way more to it than I said in this short time. But I hope that you learn that you cannot just say, I don't have talent for this. I hope you know that you can make it if you actually want, and that's a really cool thing. I hope you know how it can empower you and others, can empower your team, especially small teams is a really great thing, right? How can we do more with the time we have? Yeah, and I hope you like getting into it. Thank you. That's me. Get in touch, get on LinkedIn or wherever you find me. And yeah, if you have any questions, then just shoot them, I'd say. Sure. Oh, we have a mic. Awesome.
Thank you, Richard, for a very good talk.
No, thank you.
I want to ask, how do you define the basic stack for the technical artist to know? Like, I'm starting into technical art, and what I have to know to have like this basic start.
Yeah, I think maybe the most important things, right? The most important things for me is one, like what I said about deconstructive thinking. That's really important to like change the way you think, away from seeing just the whole, but seeing the whole and its parts. The one thing, and the other thing I can only recommend is get your hand onto logic/coding as fast as possible. Like you don't need superpowers, you don't need to make super large scripts, right? Processing whatever. Tiny things, it will add up, right? If you start this right away, it will help you understand things, get in the mindset, right? Graph systems, I don't know, embrace something more technical. If you're familiar with Substance Painter, for example, many artists are, right? But that's a good starting point. Can you spend time with Substance Designer and start breaking down materials, making your own materials, making your own filters, right? It's very possible. It just takes a bit more time to get into this. But it's a good start, learning about logic and these processes.
Okay. How to describe this? How do you how deep you need to go to know like something like when I started to learn Unreal Engine, like the first thing I have done is like build up the source code. So like you know, how deep do you need to know to
stay at the problem, right? If you wanna grasp it all, I mean, it depends on how you learn, right? Not everyone of us is learning the same. For example, I must learn on the job, right? I need a problem that I need to solve, and then I learn while doing that. Someone else might need to read the whole book before they get their feet wet, right? And so it depends on what type of learner you are. You must make learning fun for you. And that answers the question, how deep should you go? That depends on what you are needing, right? I personally, I don't need to go deep first. I just need the problem. And from there, I see what do I need to know to solve that one particular problem. That served me well and still does, right? And so I know I can come back to this. I know I can always learn more. I know when breaking into an engine, how complicated it can be and stuff like that, right? But for me, it's always like, I need a task. I break down this task. I work on that task. And when it's done, I'm smarter than before. I've learned something, right? 60-40 rule thing. And that would be how deep I need to go, right? I think this approach works well because you don't need a huge time commitment beforehand before you do anything. You just like start doing it and maybe solve the problem at some point, right?
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Thank you for your speech.
My pleasure.
I definitely see that I choose the right path. The question is, have you ever faced the situation when you, the case is you are on a meeting with your producers or managers who are strongly want to implement some feature, but from the first sight you see the problems with the way they want to implement this feature, and you recommend maybe a little bit of another path to make it right, but they're a little bit stubborn, I think, and they're still don't even try to listen to your opinion,
Okay.
and still trying. We want that.
Who in this audience
So,
has experienced the same situation?
Yeah, how do you you cope with this kind of situation, or is there any way to convince them that you're the way you see it
So,
is much more
This is super difficult, right? So for me, at some point, I resort to this rule for myself, for my mental well-being. I give advice, right? Even if in a team, if I don't get asked, I still give the advice, right? I give it once with the right explanation and try to bring it to the front, right? And then I've done my duty in this way. Sometimes things fail, and we are not always in the position to make these decisions, right? And sometimes people need to bang their head against the wall to see the wall is pretty hard. And so, more than one project failed because of wrong decisions of our very financial volume, right? And it happens. You cannot save everyone, right? You have one shield. Right. Anyone else? Okay.
So yeah, hi. Thank you for the talk, first of all. Very nice one. I feel like a lot of technical artists are obviously like people who kind of transition from different departments first, right? So kind of similar for me. I'm a technical VFX artist, and for me it was very hard always convincing people that I'm a technical artist, because like people from a VFX artist expect he's just doing anything, right? So since you also started as a 3D artist, how did you switch to it? Like, did you go to another company and actually applied as a technical artist there? Because I feel like for a lot of people, convincing their director switching to that technical art position is pretty hard.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from. My mistake was I said yes at that one point, right? And that was it. That was my decision that drove me to tech art. But I think, VFX artist is a perfect example why I think you make a very good tech artist, because you already the Swiss Army knife of artists in your company, right? You do many technical things. You run simulations. You know what a rig should look like and stuff like that. And so VFX artist, all right, I don't know why someone wouldn't see this, right? But still, just saying I'm a technical artist now doesn't make you one, right? You have to kind of prove your point. And I think it works best if you can put the proof of concept forward, right? Can you contribute to what the company needs in a significant way? You can ask your sub to give you a task that allows you to build that one tool, right? You can nudge your producer. Can I have 2 hours to make the scene switcher for Unity so I don't have to click anymore, right? All of that. Or sometimes it's a bit harder. Sometimes it's just like going into your free time and doing something that you really care about, right? But just don't do it just for the company in this case, because it will just waste you in the long run. But this can help, right? If you can show them that you can do something valuable there, it might work, right? But you have to start somewhere, right? There is no perfect solution in this case for everyone.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I think here, the gentleman in blue.
Right. Hi. I have a question. I don't know if you have an experience with working in very small teams.
Oh, yes,
when,
I do.
You have different artists with very different pipelines, very different specializations. And whenever you commit to do some work for to improve the pipeline of one of them, you're just contributing very little to the project. And you know, don't you get any like frustration that that you can not scale that up? And you know, how do you choose your battles? I mean, would you concentrate more on, you know, the tools, or maybe on the pipelines itself? So like for the whole
as soon as you go into pipeline design, you are in the realm of business decisions, basically. How much time do I need to invest, and how much does it gain, right, for me? And yes, in small teams, you will have someone coming up to you and say like, oh, I want this feature. And you say like, yeah, but it takes me 2 days to do this, and it will save you half an hour every 2 months. Then it's probably not worth it, right? They might hate you afterwards, but be realistic about it, right? Explain why it is a good idea or why it is a bad idea. There is, however, a second layer, I feel, to this. And with small teams, especially when you bring in freelancers, most have their tool sets, right? One uses Blender, the one I use Modo, for example, I don't know. Your pipeline should be robust enough to just not care, right? Whatever you do for the project, whatever pipeline tools you design, they should be agnostic of what the workflow of the artist actually is, right? So you can do very good things for getting things from an export to, I don't know, a finished game object, say, right? Assign the materials automatically, import that stuff, right? Have descriptions that they can set in their DCC in order to, I don't know, carry it over or something. Just an example. But if you manage to do that, that will be of immediate use to your whole project and to everyone, just not one person, right? But still, sometimes you know that the project will be a long-running project, and you know that helping that one person get their workflow better is helping the project in the long run, right? You need to be able to project with what you do. If you just look at what I'm spending now versus not looking ahead and saying how much will save me in the future, you will always lose, kinda, right? You can get lucky, right, and make the right call, but most of the time it's maybe you're lucky, maybe not, right? It's like throwing a coin. No, look at the problem and look ahead. Project, right? That's also your responsibility as a tech artist, right? You have to give these decisions forward. You have to evaluate things, right? And you have to communicate it to project management and say, yeah, I know this could be nice, but it's costing too much time. I don't think it will be useful. And as we elaborated, maybe sometimes they make the wrong decisions then and say, no, well, still help him. Then it's not your decision anymore, right? But at least you learn something while building a tool, so that's a plus, I guess. All right, any last questions? Oh yeah, here, second row.
So, what would you recommend for people coming from the other side of the spectrum?
Yes.
So, if I'm start as a coder and I want to start branching into art, how would you start with this?
It's actually the same thing, right? You have a range of knowledge. Say you already know how to like code your engine, right? Do you know something about graphics programming? No, but you could probably understand it, right? You know how to write code. HLSL isn't that difficult of a language. It's more about like grasping the concepts behind this. This could be a way for you, right? The same principle applies. What do you already know? And is there a direction you want to go, right? How can you help your team? If you can do shader programming for image effects or something, yeah, can you help your team? Is this interesting to you, right? Or say this doesn't interest you at all. Maybe you can go to stuff like rigging, learning more about like how the character rig works, what are the challenges the artists face. Talk to people, try to find out what they need, and then you can go forward, right? And learn the things necessary to help them in this regard. And with this spectrum that I showed between art and code, obviously, yes, on the art side, if you want to make this way all to the other side, right, you will come across the same challenges artists have. You will have art principles to learn, composition to learn, and stuff like that. I don't know if you want to go there. You don't have to, right? It's your path. So if you say, no, this isn't what I want to do, I don't want to do illustrations, right? You can just like inch yourself close enough to understand what the problem is, right, and help them to solve that problem. You don't have to be the perfect artist, right? So that would be a way as coder, also listening and trying to help them. Is this kind of thing? Right, cool. No more questions? One more, crazy.
Thank you for the great talk. And I got a question about how to approach the estimation in technical art, because within code I can say, okay, this inventory system will take me about a week of work. And within technical art, when I see the example with the sand and something like that, how to estimate it.
Yeah, cool. Welcome to the world of artists, right? Because when we estimate stuff, it's always like, yeah, I don't know. So no, but seriously, the more you know about like a problem space, the more you begin to understand, what is possible, right? We need to hurry up. So just like learn as much about the problem as you can, and then you will see how long it takes, right? In order to write a character rig retargeting, you need to know how that stuff works, right? But once you know it, you can project and you can say this will take approximately so long. But art is always kind of obscure. Producers hate artists for that reason. Probably. Sorry, producers. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being here. Have a good time.